Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Mind Your Nest. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with my guest in studio today. His name is Jeremy Plummer. And to be honest, I can't really remember the specifics of how I got in touch with Jeremy. I believe it was about 2 years ago. And there were some challenges in my family with one of my family members, and I needed some help. And I think it was on Instagram. I was following, I think, a couple of pages, and through that, I found Jeremy. His formal name is Jeremiah, and even though he doesn't look like a Jeremiah. And I had messaged him, did not know him from anything. And he was so kind and responsive. I don't believe I had a conversation with him over the phone, but we messaged for a little while. And then my need for help went away. And I've always been really interested in following him and his story and just everything about him. I reached out to him and we got together a couple weeks ago at Planet Juice here in Delray Beach. And thank you, by the way, for my smoothie. And I don't think I thanked you for that. And we had a great conversation for about an hour and a half. And I asked if he would be a guest on my podcast, and he graciously said yes. And he's going to tell a story, and we're just going to talk about it. Without further ado, Jeremy Plummer. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm so happy that you're here. I can't tell your story better than you can, obviously. And you shared a lot of personal information with me when we met. And I was just really in awe at just how strong and poised and grown up. You've been through a lot in your few years that you've been on the planet. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. And I always like it like this format to where we can like converse about it, where it's not me just speaking and you can ask questions and interject or anything like that.
Yep.
It helps pull a little bit more from me and will probably provide a better experience for the listeners.
I would agree.
So I'm from Indiana, which we just spoke about outside the room.
Love a good Midwesterner.
Yeah, hence my dog's name's Hoosier. Yes. But I found myself in Florida just short of 8 years ago. So the 27th of this month will be my 8-year sobriety anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So while growing up in Indiana, obviously like hindsight's 2020, as far as I was concerned, I had everything I wanted and needed. 2 wonderful parents, loved on us kids the best that they could. They did ultimately end up getting a divorce. I don't even know how old I was, 5 or 6 or whatever it was. And when I have a kind of a distinct memory of them telling me that they were going to be splitting up. And for whatever reason, when my immature emotional capacity at that time, I took ownership for that as if it was like my fault or I was less than. And I didn't do it consciously. I think it was just something that happened in that moment. And I didn't really even understand that until later on in life, really over these last probably 5 or 6 years. But carried on, kept it moving. Like I said, my parents split up. I found joy and peace in sports. So I just dove into that, played every sport under the sun. Back in those days, we were riding bicycles or skating from the time the sun was up until the streetlights came on. And
that's right. And maybe or maybe not going home for dinner depended on what you wanted to do.
Absolutely. And I had a great group of friends and everything was good for quite some time. It wasn't until really, I guess my first drink, I was like 12 or 13. My friend Colin, rest in peace, we snuck some beers out of his garage. Stole some Doral lights out of the freezer they used to keep them in for some reason. And we went out in the woods and had a drink and a cigarette. And I didn't really think much of it. I think I just really enjoyed like the thrill. Riding bikes, riding dirt bikes, playing sports, just chasing thrills and having fun and not really ever aware of consequences of any kind. And I was fairly harmless, but slowly but surely, weed was introduced. And then as I got into middle school, towards the tail end of 8th grade, going into the summer of freshman year, pills and different things like that started to get introduced. And I played 3 sports, so I was always busy. Everything looked good on the outside, but I didn't really understand this until later in life, but I was just struggling internally with acceptance, or what I've come to learn is just like self-love.
Yep.
Slowly but surely, the recreational use became much worse. I was able to manage it at some capacity through high school, still was able to play sports, did start to receive some consequences. I got arrested my senior year on a Monday night for minor consumption.
Were you with other friends of yours when this
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, they'd already graduated high school and were in college. And leading up to that point, I've always had an issue with discipline.
It is tough.
Yeah, I lived with mom. I took advantage of, I have 3 sisters and a brother.
Mm-hmm.
She did the absolute best she could. I love my mom to death, but I took advantage of just the freedom that I had. And when she would try to tell me to do this and that, I would just end up not doing it. And if it got to a point where I was uncomfortable or she was really trying to lay down the law, I would just leave and go to my dad's until the same thing happened there. He was a little bit more disciplinary, but when he would jam me up and prevent me from doing what I want to do, back to mom's I went. So I just always evaded discipline and authority by all means. And that theme stuck with me for a while. But leading up to that arrest, I had been truant or missed the first 3 periods of school 42 times. And
wow.
They had a very long leash for me. I performed halfway decent in athletics, and so they let me do my thing for the most part. But it finally came to a point where that day, it was a Monday, I got brought into the office. They made me sign this form saying that if I was late or missed another day of school, I was going to be expelled. Whatever went on that day, went out partying that night, got arrested, missed school the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't get expelled. I got some assistance from someone in the school system. It's probably inappropriate for me to say, but ended up getting my bond dropped quite a bit because my mom wasn't very well off. So to afford to bail me out was hard.
Yep.
Didn't get expelled, nothing, went back to school. And most people, like if that were to happen to me today, which it never would, but if it would have happened to me today, I would show my gratitude through my action, right? And at that time, just completely unaware of what I was up against internally. And I wore that as a badge of honor, as if I couldn't be touched, right? So I just carried on. If anything, my use and my defiance excelled even further.
Did your parents know about this, what happened on Monday?
Yeah, they had to. They had to go to court to do the whole thing.
Did they know everything, what happened during school, and then obviously when you got arrested?
It's actually a good question. I've always been good at evading the tough conversations. So they probably knew, but I made it exceedingly difficult for them to ever confront me or come to any conclusions surrounding that kind of stuff. I just evade, and it was exhausting, I'm sure, for them. So at a certain point, they'd just be like, all right, what are we supposed to do?
And I'm assuming it was also somewhat exhausting for you, but in a different way, because you were used to, like you just described, evading everything for so long. But it does take energy to do that as well. You probably didn't think about it back then. But
yeah, again, I think just being young and thinking I've got the world at my fingertips, I just thought I knew it all, and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and anything or anybody that got in the way of that, I just discarded or didn't pay any attention to it, didn't give them any time or energy.
When you talked about your siblings, so how close in age are all of you? And did you have any siblings in school with you during that time? And if so, were they aware of what was happening with you?
No, so I have my older sister, Stephanie, is 5 years older than me. She had graduated right before I got into high school. And then I have my little sister, Haley. She was a freshman when I was a senior. And due to my, how to say it without sounding like conceited or whatever, but I was just like, I was in like the
cool crowd.
Yeah,
the
I would like to
popular
think,
crowd.
and I played sports and all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So she thought the world of me. In her eyes, I could do no wrong. And in a lot of ways, I don't think anybody knew the severity of like my use or what I was actually doing. By the time I was a senior, I was actively selling drugs.
Wow.
I was halfway decent at keeping all that stuff under wraps. She wasn't really privy to any of that. She just thought that I was the man. And again, I was pretty good at hiding stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So that happened. Like I said, like I was saying, the consequences started to add up. And then high school came to a close. And because I was so undisciplined and irresponsible, I didn't really take any of the necessary steps as I was exiting high school as
Mhm.
far as going to college. And I did have some opportunities to continue on and play sports in college, but just never followed up. I went on a few visits, did a few things, had a few opportunities, but didn't even fill out my FAFSA stuff in time. I just didn't
Right.
even set myself up to succeed in any way, shape, or form. And
How were your parents during this time with all of that?
just busy.
Were they like, "Hey, what's your story? What's your plan?"
Yeah, I'm sure those conversations happened,
Mhm.
but like by this time I had a car and I
Yeah.
just, again, I can't really blame them for any of it. I'm certain that they did as much as they could to make sure that I was headed in the right direction,
Right.
but I was so defiant that the simple fact that they told me to do something or that I should do something made me want to do the opposite.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And you were in your own world,
Yeah, and I
right?
thought I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
I was making money, doing what I was doing. At that time, I thought it was so cool. Amongst the people that I was around, it was cool because I had what they wanted and
Yeah.
I was making money as a result. So, like, in my eyes, I was like, I'm doing fine. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Not really being willing to acknowledge the risks or sustainability of any of it.
Mhm.
And I certainly didn't have any idea at that time the downward spiral that was to come as I started to use those substances more and became physically dependent.
So talk to me about post high school and what the next, I don't know, few years, 5 years
Mhm.
were like for you.
Yeah, slowly but surely. And again, I didn't realize this until later, but my one of my biggest issues was just insecurity within myself and like lack of purpose. So as
Mhm.
I exited high school, no longer had the accountability of from my coaches and teammates through sports.
Yep.
I was just like out in the world. All I was ever really good at was like partying and playing sports. Now the sports are gone.
Mhm.
Now I'm just partying. I don't like any of the jobs that were my dad for years was trying to get me tapped in with different careers. He works been an insurance adjuster for 20 plus years, probably 30 years. So he had a lot of connections with body shops and different things and got me a ton of different opportunities that I would show up for a short time and then sleep in or call out or just show up barely,
Hmm.
under the influence of different things. And, slowly but surely and that's really what from ages 19, really up until I got sober was just, I moved from place to place. My dad got me hooked up with a wonderful family that owned a collision center franchise. Just we're from Indiana, Illinois is obviously right there.
Mhm.
So I moved in with the sons are my age, still friends with them today. Tried all that, but like everywhere I went, there I was. Like it was,
That's one of, I have a lot of favorite sayings, but that is right up there
yeah,
because it's the
and
truth.
it's the truth. And so I would anywhere that I would go, maybe I would succeed for a short time
Mhm.
with being able to get excited with the newness of an opportunity or wanting. I always had a want to make my dad proud or my family proud, but if I just wasn't interested, eventually that want to make them proud would be overcome by my want to do whatever I wanted to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And I would imagine from a physical or biological perspective, your need to continue to be in your addiction.
Yeah. And it was a slow burn. Like I was able to keep things together at some capacity, but then like I started to have some physical issues. I was using Xanax at this time pretty excessively. So anytime I would go without for more than a couple of days, I would
Mhm.
have a seizure. So, stuff like that started happening.
Did you, during this time, were you ever in need of being hospitalized?
Yeah. And that started to happen towards the end. Like the first, let's see. So I did have a seizure while driving a car and hit my head and hurt my ankle. I actually declined the hospital that time.
Wow.
But
And nobody was injured due to
fortunately not.
that?
It was just a single
Oh,
car.
wow.
I hit a telephone pole by
Somebody
myself.
is watching out for you.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely a theme for
Oh,
my
yeah.
for my
No, you
journey.
definitely have something over you,
Yeah,
like a halo.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, long story short, from the moment I graduated high school up until I finally surrendered fully to the process of being in recovery and being sober, it was just
And how old were you and how old are you now?
I finally got sober at 29.
Okay. And
And I
you're
just turned 37 on Tuesday.
happy
On the 10th.
birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody wish Jeremy happy birthday. That's fantastic.
Yeah, different states, different opportunities. I entered my first treatment center when I was, I think, 25. And that was after an overdose. Pretty significant one where I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. Very scary for my family. And there had been some stuff leading up to that, health-wise, that the gig was up by this time.
I'm sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you had taken your body to the max
Yeah,
at
and
an early age.
Yeah, by this time, my use was impossible to hide, which made it even harder for them to parent me or do anything because I was just, again, evade.
Yeah,
And
I would imagine.
I was more inclined to sleep in my car or be homeless or try to find a friend's house to stay in than face the music with either one of my parents in their household, because it was like, it got to the point where they couldn't just sit there and allow me or watch me do what I was doing under their roof.
Yeah,
So they had to make the tough decision of, you can't be here if this is how you're going to operate.
Where did all this happen? Did it happen at your dad's house, your mom's house, or did it happen wherever you were living at the time?
Anywhere that I was at. Yeah, it happened at my mom's house. I got kicked out of there. Happened at my dad's house. Got kicked out of there. My sister even was doing a nursing assignment in Seattle, Washington. I was living with her. That was the first time I elected to become an IV user.
Wow.
And she had the misfortune of having discovered me with track marks and stuff like that. She made the tough decision of kicking me out when I was homeless in Seattle for a while. But that's when my dad flew out there to come to the rescue, and I entered a treatment center shortly after that.
So that's when everything started turning.
Yeah. Yeah, it just became my willingness or ability to fight my addiction started to become lesser and lesser. It was just really becoming too powerful for me to manage. And my options outside of homelessness or jail were becoming less and less. I burnt every possible bridge that I had, friends, family, anything like that. Everyone was fed up at this point. And I started to realize like how bleak my situation was, and my only real option was to go to treatment.
And how did that start for you? Hospitalized, and then after that?
I'm fortunate to have an uncle, my Uncle Tyson. He's in long-term recovery. He's got 5 more years than I do. His birthday's actually on my anniversary, so it's coming up here in a couple weeks.
Wow, that's
special human.
And interesting.
I know.
Numbers and dates.
He's the last person to see me under the influence, or he was the person that, I'll get to this part, but he showed up at the doorstep of where I was living in Nashville, Tennessee, the last day that I ever used.
Wow.
And it was on his, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, a powerful moment, intervention.
Absolutely.
Where all worlds collide, skies aligning, stars, all that stuff.
Yep. So yeah, I entered, I guess technically my second treatment, and this was in Tennessee, through my Uncle Tyson. He pulled some strings and got me in there. And I started to surrender to the idea that I had some issues. I had a hard time ever saying, my name's Jeremy, I'm an alcoholic, or my name's Jeremy, I'm a drug addict. I had a lot of shame surrounding that whole kind of philosophy or mindset. And that prevented me from being able to really receive the true benefits of recovery. And I would still, in those environments, treatment environments, I'm able to say the right things and even do the right things, but not necessarily internalize it. And always in the back of my mind, have reservations or know that I'm going to go do what I'm going to do once I get done with this inconvenience that I'm in the midst of. I was in this treatment center. I learned a lot. I did learn a lot and met some wonderful young men that were in different stages of their own journey, either had already been to treatment or done this and that, and they would impart their wisdom on me as far as I started to share, hey, I know I can't shoot heroin and cocaine at the same time anymore. Maybe that's not a good idea. None of my favorite athletes do any of that, or successful people. However, I still do think I can drink alcohol, maybe smoke weed every now and then. So I was married to this idea, and they were like, I hear you. We've been where you're at. We tried to drink and smoke, and guess what? We're back here with you now. And I was like, yeah, you're not me. You don't know this. You don't know that. He's trying to differentiate myself.
Yeah.
And so I left that treatment center. Again, having learned a lot, but knowing that I was going to do whatever I needed to do to ultimately like smoke and drink again. I did leave there agreeing to go to a sober living environment, mostly because I had nowhere else to go. Like last minute, neither my mom or my dad said that I could come back home.
You did not have, there were no balloons. Welcome back.
Yeah,
we missed
none
you.
of that. Yeah, they wanted this process to continue. And So I entered the sober living.
Still in Tennessee?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and very quickly learned the ropes and what I could do, what I couldn't do, made friends with the right people, whatever. And ultimately, I got a job at an Amazon warehouse, which was like hundreds of people, you know what I mean? And I still had that. And I probably still have the ability to identify who's like me
Yeah.
or who likes to do what I do. And
Mhm.
very quickly did that. Didn't take long for me to start to acquire drugs again. I started slow, like just smoking or having a drink. I found someone that had opiates and I was able to hide it.
Mhm.
And then come to find out and this doesn't happen. I don't want there to be any negative attachment to this or a stigma or any of the things that often occur in recovery. But I did discover that my halfway house manager was using, which was perfect
Yeah.
because him and I were friends.
Yep.
And so that was like the green light for me. Like now
Right.
I know his secret. He knows mine. We're
Mhm.
obviously not going to tell on each other. It's all systems go and was actively just getting high while living in sober living. And then I always was very adamant about just fulfilling my 6-month commitment, which was what my parents required.
Mhm.
That's one of the prerequisites. Yeah, it's like 6 months to a year.
Yep.
I was like, boom, at 6 months, I moved out and intentionally moved in. I went and toured this house to rent, a room to rent at a house.
Mhm.
And while I was there, was catching heavy drifts of the smell of marijuana
Mhm.
from the neighbors next door. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is exactly where I want to live.
That's right.
And really just started to put the puzzles in place for an epic destruction. And it's like me, and I'm just like completely oblivious.
Yeah.
I'm almost on like cruise control to do exactly what I've done every other time, even though I have all these resources and people and things in place to help me make that shift and do something different. But I just elected to do what I always did and what I wanted to do instead of what was best for me. And it wasn't long after moving into that place that I was smoking, drinking, using on a daily basis.
You weren't ready. You weren't ready to open up your heart, open up your soul, open up your mind. You were just going through the motions to satisfy really other people
Yeah.
who were demanding this of you.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't demanding. You weren't ready to demand it of yourself at that time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, even still, was just driven by fear of
Yeah,
the unknown.
Of course.
Like I was much more comfortable in the misery and chaos of
Yeah.
my drug addicted life.
You were young, and I believe that the majority of your life and your awareness of your life was spent in action and
Mm-hmm.
in a different world, basically. You were in your own utopia.
Yeah. And I was just, it was way easier for me to navigate. I was just familiar with discomfort
Yeah.
or chaos, always being in crisis. Like I was actually more comfortable in that because I just knew what it was and I just knew how to be in that space.
Right.
But as far as doing something different, just raw sobriety, I was just so petrified of it that I just, even without consciously making decisions, would do things to put me further from that.
So when did things really start to turn from your life in Tennessee, and how did you wind up in Florida?
So my use started to pick up pretty drastically.
Were you still in touch with your uncle during this whole time?
Yes and no.
Mhm.
He elected to keep a safe distance. He didn't want to project his recovery, his sobriety, his journey onto me.
Is that what you would call detachment with love, detach with love?
Yeah, and I think those of us in recovery try to there's this saying like attraction rather than promotion.
Right.
And he wanted me, he knows, like his story wasn't like one day he just, like it was one crisis, then he got sober. He was like a repeat offender, chronic relapser, burnt everything to the ground, very comparable to mine. And so he knew that like the only way for this thing to stick would be as if I discovered it on my own instead of somebody forcing it upon me.
Yep.
So he made the tough choice, which I know he's told me was very difficult because he had heard through the grapevine that I wasn't doing well and was just hoping that the ship would right itself or like I didn't have to die or overdose again for something to happen. And so he distanced himself until my use got to a point. I had a different job at this point. I was like stealing from the cash register, doing everything that I thought that I would never do. This was a Wednesday in September, I believe. I didn't go to work that week, Monday or Tuesday, and now we're at Wednesday, not going to work again. My phone's shut off. I have no money. I have no nothing. I'm in the basement of this room of this old woman that I manipulated into letting me stay with her. I am extremely sick from going through withdrawals from all the different substances, and I'm really just at a dead end. The only two thoughts that are going through my mind are I'm going to go to an ATM, wait for somebody to try to pull money out, and I'm going to rob them, or I'm just going to commit suicide. And I'm laying there sweating, going back and forth between the two ideas. I'm too much of a coward to commit that act. So I'm like, all right, here we go. And all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. I'm basically in like a psychosis at this point from not really sleeping, from all the IV cocaine and heroin use. So I'm like freaking out, paranoid. Oh my God, the cops know I'm about to go rob somebody.
Right.
They're already here. You know what I mean? It's like Minority Report or something,
right.
that movie where they know that I'm about to do something.
Right. Or they're just inside your brain.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, oh, we got you.
Yeah.
We know your deal.
So I'm scared out of my mind. I'm not answering the door. I let about an hour go by, and there's a knock again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. So I go open the door, and it's my uncle. And it was crazy. And he just asked me if I was done. And in that moment, I was absolutely done. It was like even him asking me and me saying the words felt like 1,000 pounds were lifted off my shoulders. Sure. I just had to finally just stop fighting. And so I experienced some relief just in that moment in itself. Very quickly followed by fear and all the different things, my addiction rearing its ugly head.
Yep.
But there was that glimmer of surrender. And I told him, yeah, I'm done. He's okay. He's pack your stuff. You're going to go to detox and we're going to get you out of here. I'm like, what do I need? He's everything. You're never coming back here again. And he's like, before you do that, he's like, why don't you take a shower? Because when I'm like in that mode, I don't brush my teeth. I barely eat. I don't shower. I don't do anything that's going to impede like my high or anything like that. And I also just don't have the energy for anything healthy.
And that at that time, it's not important to you.
Yeah. It's like
the last
irrelevant.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just don't care.
Yeah.
I took a shower, packed all my things, and he took me to detox for the last time. And during my time there, the original plan was for me to stay in Tennessee. We were starting to put the pieces in place for that to happen. But the day before I was to be discharged, my case manager came in and said, we think that you've done enough here in Tennessee. It may be a good idea for you to get out of here. We've got you set up with a place in South Florida.
Fantastic.
And so my Uncle Tyson had set me up with a couple different things down here.
You had definitely made a name for yourself in Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
They were ready.
I would have died there 100%. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Listen, at least you got around the United States. You got to see some really beautiful parts of the country.
And I think in some ways, because I didn't get sober till I was older, and it wasn't always extremely terrible. When I finally got down here, I was 29 years old. I had done a little bit of traveling. I had done the Las Vegas with a bachelor. I'd done a bunch of stuff, and I was like okay with my drinking and using career. I was like, you know what?
Yeah, it's like you had already had this crazy life, done it all kind of thing at the ripe old age of 29. And you're like, all right, let me try this.
Yeah. And so there was that. And the big piece was I entered another sober living environment, and there was like 4 or 5 guys, all of which were a little bit younger than me, but they were like 6 months further along. They'd been there for about 6 months. They had sponsors. They were going to meetings. They were working the 12 steps. They were in the gym. They were going to the beach. They were playing sports, and they were just like laughing and happy. And I always say this, had I entered into an environment where people weren't doing those things at that point in time, where I was so impressionable and just so full of fear, I could have very easily slipped into the same old thing and just ended up using down here too. Yep. But I think, again, God intervened, placed some incredible men in my life, and I just latched onto them like my life depended on it, because it really did.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I would imagine that going into that environment where there is hope and like a sliver of joy and sun, which seems to be contradictory to what your life was like up until that point, you're like, all right, I'm going to try this.
Yeah, and there's lots to be said about that. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just where I was at in my life, or, again, God just like choosing to lean on me a little bit more in that time, but just the sunlight and like the ocean, there was something happening that was starting to like bring me back to life a little bit. And I think that was
divine intervention.
Yeah, just
thanks
all
to
of
your
it.
uncle.
The men, me surrendering led right into being introduced to incredible men, allowing me to be in Florida with the ocean and the sun. And like little by slowly, like all those things combined started to put me back together.
And how were you just a sponge during that time?
Yeah, 100%. So I got picked up at the airport by this gentleman. His name's Paul Taylor. He recently passed away. Older gentleman. He owned the sober living I was in. Incredible guy. But like as soon as I got into his car at the airport, I'm just like, whatever you tell me to do, I'm gonna do. Like my uncle gave me this bookmark and it says "Surrender to Win," and I held on to that. So as I came down here, I just tried to abandon everything that I had done previously, as far as me wanting to run the show, and just kind of just do what was suggested of me by people who had what I wanted.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so how has your life been since that time?
Oh gosh, year by year, just continues to up and to the right. The trajectory of my life since being in Florida has continuously been better and better. Incredible friendships. My connection and relationship with my family has never been better. The things that I've been able to do, travel the world, in and out of the country, incredible events, career-wise, in the best place that I've ever been financially. And none of that stuff matters as far in comparison to like the inner peace that I have, knowing that just like the man that I am today, I'm happy with, and knowing that there's still more work to do. Like being okay with continuing to do the self-work and being okay with the fact that I'm human and I'm not going to be perfect, but giving myself grace. And instead of every time I fail, burning it all to the ground, being open-minded to, okay, there's something to learn here, and then taking the action to try to be better.
When did you decide, or when was the thought of, I want to stay and help others, and I want this to be my profession, helping other people and using your personal story as a guide of hope for other people at such a young age?
Yeah, I don't know. My dad actually seems to think that I've always had that want to help other people and see others succeed. I don't know if that comes from like having a sports background and being in a team environment.
Right, yeah.
Or having siblings maybe. I don't know how that happens, but I do know that as I got further along in recovery, I did really enjoy, I think maybe just finally having something to offer. So like when now I have a year of sobriety or whatever, when someone comes in with a couple days or a couple weeks and they're like scared out of their minds, and I can relate to that feeling. And now I'm in a position to maybe help them get to a closer place of comfort. I felt a responsibility to do that. And then the fulfillment that comes from doing that, I really enjoyed. Anybody that's in recovery knows what I'm talking about. Is being of service provides a sense of fulfillment that not many things can touch.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Having an ex-husband who was in long-term recovery, recently relapsed, and now is starting his clock over again, and then as well as having a son. I will say, and I think I shared this with you, I never in my wildest dreams at the age of 57 thought that addiction and recovery and everything that goes along with that, because there's a lot, right? There's a lot of shit. That would be really part of my life. And it'll be 23 years next month, October 29th, that I left my ex-husband. And my daughter was 11 months old and my son was 3. And even before that, I was aware. I knew he was an addict. I started going to 12-step meetings. I think I told you I was at an open meeting, one for Gam-Anon and GA, and the addicts were none too kind to me, my little naive.
Right.
But I have to say that I do believe that there was a reason why this all happened, to why we were brought together, why we met, we married, we had children, we got divorced. That the people that I've met that are both in recovery, relapsed, and then are in recovery again, as well as the families, are some of the most authentic, honest people I've ever met in my life. really.
Mm.
And the whole experience has made me more honest and authentic and open to what really is important in your life if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think an addiction to alcohol has the capacity to do that. It engulfs everything.
Yes.
And it's always the people that you love the most, that you have the most love for, that it affects the most. And
Right.
usually it ends up being, it strips you of everything to where you have to be authentic. There is no time. Sometimes when it's like life or death, there is no time for sugarcoating
That's right.
or BS. And
Bubblegums and rain.
it's like the rawest, most authentic moments. And it carries over into the family because they start to realize what's important,
Yeah.
how finite our time on this earth can be, and just always wanting to, like, just treating every moment it's just like being radically present because you're not unsure of what's to come. So it ends up looking like a very authentic life, just the way everything. Yeah.
A couple of things that I've learned all these years and along the way are tenets I think that you obviously have absorbed and lived are shame, obviously. And it's not just for the person, the addict, but it's for the family, which is tremendous. It's so heavy inside of your soul. It really is. And fear, obviously. Maybe not sometimes for the addict. If they're in their addiction, they're not that fearful. They're having a grandiose life.
Yeah, just incapable of really
That's right.
feeling anything.
They're at the casino, they're high, they're drunk, they're on God knows what kind of drugs. And so they're, like I said earlier, they're in euphoria. But I have been in meetings where family members were doing the real tough love. And I understand what tough love is to a degree. I would say that I probably wasn't the tough love mom my whole time of being a mother. But I will say that for my experience, not so much with my ex-husband, but with our son, that wasn't going to really work for us. It just wasn't. I think we had attempted to do tough love, and the immediate reaction to the possibility of implementing that tough love felt like it was going to be the end of a life.
Right.
And that's something that I wasn't willing to go to the ends of the earth to do. And I just loved. I always believed that I was fortunate to grow up being loved and shown that I mattered to my family and that I was here for a reason. And I think that's one of the most important things that a human can do to another human. We're all on this planet really alone. We're born alone, we die alone, all those things. And I do believe that part of having a life well lived and having a joyful life is having love in your life, and giving love and support and understanding and just being there. You don't always have to be the talker. Having two good ears is probably sometimes the best quality you can ever have.
Yeah.
And just listening and hearing people, not just listening to respond, but really hearing and understanding somebody's pain. The other thing that I know that you and I have talked about is that nobody wants to be an addict. Nobody wakes up one day and says, you know what, today I think I'm going to really try to screw up my life.
Right.
And I'm going to shoot up heroin. I'm going to go to the casino. You know what? And I might even just get a bottle of Jack Daniels and be like, why not? I'm going to do the trifecta. So that addiction, from my perspective, really is rooted in pain, mental illness, feeling less than, having shame for whatever reason. I do believe that there is a genetic component to addiction. My personal experience with my family has brought me to that. And it did take me a while to truly believe that addiction was a disease. Because for a lot of people, including myself, never having an experience with an addict in my family up until I did, you do think that it's a choice.
Right.
Why can't they just stop drinking? And I'm not a big partier. I'm not a big drinker. But that is such a short-sighted judgment on another person that you have no clue what is going on with that person when they go home, or if they even have a home, or why they're drinking, or why do they do what they do to such excess.
Yeah.
That you think it's like a light switch that they can just turn on and off, and it's really not. people that are in so much pain and shame, they just want it to go away. And so they say, all right, I'm going to have a drink. I'm going to do all the other things that might bring me to the brink of ending my life.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. It really is, especially knowing all the people that have lost their lives from it because they couldn't, they didn't want to, they weren't ready to just give it all up to try recovery. My son has known so many people, young people, that have died as a result. And I'm grateful that my ex-husband is here on the planet, my son is here, and they have been tremendous teachers for me. My son, he's young, he's 23, he's going to be 24 next month, and it's not my business to question anybody's program. I learned that many years ago from my ex-husband, which I do believe is true. Yeah. Like, I have to look in my own mirror and deal with my own life and focus on myself, and they have to do the same. It's just that fear and that trepidation that you have for the other person who's in their addiction or maybe starting early recovery, that you're like, okay, maybe if I do this and this, they'll stay in recovery. But that's not true, because
unfortunately.
Yeah, we're all here and we all have our own way of thinking like you did. You weren't ready until you were ready. How would you talk to, I don't know, young people, since you were young when all this started? We live in a much different time right now. Technology, as you're aware, and all of the, let's say, apps that encourage a lot of addictions or romanticize drinking, drugs, smoking, whatever. How would you guide young people who are on a similar path as yours to just take a chance on themselves and believe that there's a better way to live your life?
It's like a long-winded answer.
I know.
Such a dynamic question.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I do tend to be long-winded, so my apologies.
It's a great question, and there's just so many layers to the answer. My first thought was comparison is the thief of joy.
I love that saying. Another one is the best.
And we're in this day and age specifically, it wasn't quite as prevalent when I was coming up. So easy to see the highlights or what people are choosing to show you as parts of their life, and who knows if that's even the truth. These young people are at such a disadvantage, and coupled with the fact that because everything's digital, texting, DMs, social media, their ability to communicate their shortcomings, which is something that I struggled with. I wasn't good at letting you know how I felt. I didn't even know how to communicate those types of feelings. I never gave my parents the opportunity to teach me that. Anytime that they would try to have a conversation that had anything to do with feelings, I would run away from. And that was that was a challenge for me entering into recovery, because that's what we do in those rooms. We talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
And we share openly about where we're at, and we're open to suggestions and things like that. So my suggestions to a newer person coming through would be to not be concerned about what other people think. Start to try to identify what fuels you, like what you're passionate about. Start being willing to talk about how you feel. My dad and my grandpa, his dad, I think they come from a generation where that traditional, just like work hard, men don't cry type of thing. Yeah. And as much as I respect that way of life, like anything, there's consequences to that. And so I'm more on the train of, let's talk about how you feel, and that's the manly thing to do. You know?
Yeah, and when you ask, how are you doing, you really are asking, how are you doing?
Yeah, and it's okay to not be doing okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's another thing. Again, it goes back to those men that I landed in sober living with, finding good people that have what you want, that are on the path that you're trying to be on, and doing that, and being okay with not being the leader. Just latch on and follow until you're able to stand on your own 2 feet. Now I am strong enough in myself to where I could do whatever I want, knowing that even if I fail, I'm not going to drink or drug over it. And that's a powerful place to be. I can do anything.
How do you feel that you cope with tragedies or real hurt? I'm not saying that having a bad day isn't a real hurt.
Right.
But somebody passing, somebody that you've known for a long time from your past of being in your addiction, maybe they relapsed more than you. And have you had the experience, I think I know the answer, to people that you've known that are no longer here.
Yeah, like your son. I can't even count how many people I've felt like here yesterday, gone today.
Yeah.
Type, you know what I mean? Like people I've conversed with the day before that got in their feelings that night or had something going on that they didn't share about.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that it shows they made the choice to use, and that was their last time.
Yeah.
With no intent of dying,
Right.
but they were just so wildly uncomfortable. They used, and in this day and age, it's very dangerous out there. The streets are a lot different than 8-10 years ago when I was running around. It wasn't as much of Russian roulette. The percentage of me using and not overdosing was significantly higher than it is today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My ex-husband, he ran a halfway house for many years. And even to this day, I remember him sharing when people, like you just described, were here today and they were gone tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sad.
Yeah, it's usually something fairly trivial too. And I don't say that to undermine or dismiss whatever it was that they were going through, but just in my own experience, I've gone through so far in my recovery, failed relationships have been probably the higher end of pain and anguish that I've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely gotten me closer to that, wanting to harm myself or use. The losing people, it's just so freaking sad especially when you understand that it's just those small moments of discomfort where addiction shows its ugly head the most. Mm-hmm. And it tells you that we know how to make you feel better. You can just use this one time and tomorrow will be different. But that one time today, in this day and age, is killing people. So it just makes it very sad.
My son and I were actually talking about this recently. He's very open, and I was asking him what drugs he's tried in his life, and wasn't surprised, didn't really have a reaction at all. He's a different person. He's a separate human from me. And while I might be a prudy or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm right and he's wrong or vice versa. It was really interesting talking with him and how open he was to his experiences compared to his friends, people he knew in and out of recovery, and what he would never do. And like you just described, how prevalent the overdose is right now with fentanyl and heroin and all these other drugs that are potentially mixed in with each other.
Yeah.
Where you just don't know.
Yeah, and that's the drug that really set me off the worst were these little blue pills, these little Roxys they were called. And nowadays, so they didn't have the pressed fake ones back when I was using them. Nowadays, that same exact pill is filled with, and it looks unassuming, and it looks like this little thing will just help me feel better for the next couple hours.
Right.
But that little thing, if you get it from the street today, is liable to kill you. And so...
Right away or within minutes.
Yeah. So it's a different ball game. Like the fentanyl epidemic started to be more prevalent right when I got down here. So I never really actually wanted to die. And I was hearing of how many people were dying down here, and it actually helped me. Damn, I don't want to die. Sure, at that early stages, using still is something that you think about every now and then. But I was so afraid of getting a batch that was going to kill me that it was a deterrent. So in some ways, I feel fortunate. But for those that aren't so fortunate, it's been really brutal these last years, watching good young people, much younger than my early 20s and stuff like that, that don't quite have whatever that is that prevents them from taking the first one. And again, they have no intentions of dying. That's not their goal. They just wanted to not feel how they're feeling for a couple minutes and ultimately losing their life. It's super sad.
Jeremy, so I want to end on a positive note. Yeah. And being a Chicagoan, even though I'm now a Floridian after a little over 2.5 years, and as a lifelong Chicago Cubs fan, I learned about hope. Hope springs eternal. My dad was a huge Chicago Cubs fan, so obviously we had to have hope because it took a real long time to get that World Series win 8 years ago. And I do believe in hope. Even with everything that I've gone through with my family, with my ex-husband, with my son, and my daughters, how it impacted my daughter's life all these years, even at the end of the day, the sun sets and the sun rises. It just happens. And even when you're at your lowest, having a sliver of hope and imagining that somebody's hand is reaching for yours to help you. Just having that sometimes is enough to want to believe and hope. What do you think about that? And do you believe it's hope? Do you believe that it's other people being your little helper on the shoulder, guiding you? What do you believe that it is that not only helped you, but has helped so many others that you've been involved with over all of these years that helps them turn the corner?
I think it's hope, and what's right alongside that is faith. And all that's found, in the rooms that we go to for the meetings and in the conversations with those who have a little bit more time doing this deal than we do. That's where I found it. Anytime I still have yet to encounter a difficult situation that I'm going through that I can't ask somebody and they have gone through it and made it out the other side. So that gives me hope. And faith that if I do the next right thing, help other people, and at this point, with all the stuff that I've gone through and made it out from, I have an unshakable faith that somebody's looking out for me, and also all the tough stuff that's happened for a reason. And sometimes it takes me a day or two, a week, month, sometimes even a year to understand why that happened. Nothing has happened that later on down the road I wasn't given an answer like, this is why this needed to happen. So yeah, hope and faith, and we didn't even really get to this part of it, but what's been a huge help for me is just moving my body.
Yes.
Sometimes moving a muscle can change a thought, and that victim mentality or pity party you're throwing yourself, sometimes you can get out of that with a long run or a good workout, or even as simple as a conversation with a friend. So
that is so true. And I think that's a wonderful place to end. Jeremy, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody, if you want to get in touch with Jeremy, if you know somebody that's suffering or needs some help, all of his information will be in the show notes when the podcast airs. Thank you, everybody, and don't forget to mind your nest.